Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are continuing my best of series where I'm talking about ILNP. So in case you missed it, last week I started a new series on my channel called The Best Of, where I share my favorites or top recommendations for specific brands. And I'm super excited to share my favorites from ILNP. I think it's no surprise that they are a top favorite of mine, and I'm sure so many others as well. And even though my collection of ILNP isn't as extensive as like other brands that I have, I still obviously really love them and would love to share more of my thoughts around some favorites that I have and just some general thoughts about the brand too. So let's just get into it. So before we get into talking about the nail polishes, I do want to talk about their nail essentials or their base and top coat that they offer. I believe these only launched like a year ago around this time. So I am curious to know if you guys have tried these, but as far as my thoughts go, I really love their base coat. This is their Lockup base coat, and it's basically like a sticky base coat. This one works really well for me personally. I usually don't go for long-lasting manis because I love to change up my nail polish like an excessive amount, but when I do want something that's long-lasting, this is like my go-to. I did a wear test with this when it first came out a year ago, and on my other hand, I always get chips, especially on like these first two fingers. And I was so impressed with how these held up, especially because I always get chips on like the second day or something. Again, these two fingers are just like the worst. So this base coat is an absolute holy grail when it comes to like a long lasting base coat for me. And then they also have their glass candy top coat, which is pretty much your standard super shiny quick drying top coat. I definitely do like this product. I mean, I have it like half full right now. I especially love that it comes with a wide brush. I really wish the wide brushes that were in here were in all of ILNP polishes, but it makes applying top coat like super easy. The only thing I don't love about this top coat is just that it's a little on the thinner side maybe, so it's not a super thick plump kind of top coat. So I wouldn't recommend this if you're trying to wear like glitter polishes or anything that's kind of heavily textured. You have a glitter grabber, obviously you can layer that and then this on top and I'm sure it'll be fine. But if you are using like typical shimmers or creams, something that already has a smooth finish, this is great for that. So now getting into the polishes, the first category that we have are the shimmers. You know, I'm a big fan of shimmery polishes and I really love ILNPs. I only have 4 of my like top favorites for these recommendations, but as like a little spoiler alert, I just feel like you can't go wrong with whatever you choose. But as far as the shimmers that I have, the first one I have is Fairy Dust, which came out in the Fairy Forest collection earlier this year. It's just a beautiful light purple jelly that has this really like kind of like a multi-chrome shimmer where it's a beautiful coppery orange that shifts to yellow and then green in extreme angles. You might be able to see it in like the corners of the bottle. And there's also this sprinkling of holographic glitter as well. So it's just such an ethereal, total fairy vibe type of polish. It is so whimsical, magical, absolutely beautiful on your nails. Because their shimmers are a little bit sheer, you can wear this in like one coat as a topper or build it up to be a little bit more opaque, either on 2 or 3 coats depending on how much nail line you like. But yeah, this is definitely like probably one of their most popular shades that have released this year. Also absolutely love Hallucinate. I feel like this is such a great dupe for that one Clarins 230 like unicorn pea polish. They are like virtually identical, so if you're still lusting after that unicorn pea type of polish, I feel like this is such a great one. But either way, it is just so beautiful because it's a really deep like blue type of purple base color with another sort of multi-chrome shimmer in here that is red head on, but then it goes to yellow and green. This is a favorite that I shared for Halloween, but it's also really great just whenever you want. It is super, super stunning. And of course, I have Autumn from the Harvest collection that came out last year. That whole collection you really cannot go wrong with. This is one of those collections where it's like the same exact finish in different colors. So if you, for whatever reason, don't like this shade and you want like a red version or a purple version, you can get them. But Autumn is that girl. Like, she is so freaking pretty. This is what I'm wearing right now on my nails. I don't know how well you can see it, but it is like a beautiful dark brown jelly base with these really gorgeous shifty copper and gold kind of shimmer particles. I'm pretty sure ILNP classifies these polishes as shimmers, but a lot of their shimmer polishes have like a very large shimmer particle to the point that it looks like a borderline micro flaky. So personally, like, I would call this a micro flaky formula, but it is different than like their other flakies, which I will get to. But these are definitely very, very dense, so it does have more of like a shimmer type of effect, I guess, on the nail. Yeah, this is like the brown for the fall season. It is just so beautiful, stunning on everybody, a must-have. And lastly, I have Ruby, which came out in last year's New Year's Eve collection. This is just a bright red that I feel like is so perfect for the holiday season. It almost again has this like slight metallic type of finish because of the large shimmer particles slash super tiny flakies. Like, it just gives it a slight foily kind of quality to it. This is just a stunning red. I especially loved it last year. It was definitely my favorite from the collection that it came out in, and this is another one that is a part of a collection that has the same finish but different colors. So again, if you don't like the red, you can get a few different colors. So next we have their Flakies, and I only have 3 for my personal recommendations, but I still think they are absolutely stunning and worth having in your collection. The first one is Lord, and this came out in last year's Trapped collection for Halloween, and it is this super gorgeous and spooky kind of black jelly base with this really vibrant, like deep aqua kind of metallic microflake in here. And I think there is also like a dusting of a scattered hollow effect in there as well, but it's really subtle compared to the metallic microflakies in here. But this is just such a beautiful combination. Like, I never would have thought to pair such a bright colored flaky with a black base, so it looks especially cool for like Halloween season. I think this could also work for like winter in a way. It is just such a cool shade. Next I have Hex, which is from the same collection actually, and this is another blackened jelly base, but this has these super gorgeous iridescent microflakes that shift from gold to orange and red and green. So it's very like fiery, but also kind of reminds you of leaves in the fall. I just really love this one. Like, even though it is very specific to like one particular holiday for me, I definitely can't imagine this not being in my collection. I would gladly have it just to wear it for like the month of October, you know? They did release like a red version in this year's Halloween collection, and I believe they also have a purple one called Jinx from a couple of years ago. So again, if you don't like the black version, they do have like different colors. But for a lighter option, I have Up Above from the spring collection this year, the Fairy Forest one. This is like a really soft cornflower jelly blue base with this iridescent flaky in there that kind of shifts from yellow to green and maybe some hints of like aqua. And there's also a dusting of hollow sparkle. I feel like the flaky mix in here just reminds me of opals, and that's my birthstone. I'm always gonna be a fan of any polish that gives me opalescent vibes. Kind of gives me like Cinderella vibes too, in a way. I feel like maybe this could work for winter. Not exactly my first choice, but I could see it working. I'm such a huge fan of this like cornflower type of base color. It is just super dainty, so squishy and airy and ethereal, which are all words that I absolutely love when it comes to my nail polishes. So I think this one is just so darling. The next category I have is obviously a very small one, but I will talk about it in a second. But this is their holographic scattered jellies, which I am such a huge fan of. It's probably one of my top finishes from ILNP, even though it is a little bit on the subtle or like simple side, but I just think they do them so well and they are so, so pretty. So the first one that I have is Riding Waves. This one is obviously an older bottle. I've had it for like a couple of years and I don't remember exactly what collection it came out in, but it is just this beautiful like minty seafoam green type of polish. It almost has like a jade sort of color to it as well, but I think seafoam is probably like the best way to describe it. And there is just the most delicate sprinkling of scattered hollow in here. This is just such a perfect color for the summertime. I just think it is so pretty and you just can't go wrong with a shade like this. So because this is a jelly, it definitely requires a couple of coats depending on how your preference is when it comes to your nail line. I usually build it up in at least 2 coats, but if not, always like a third, just to get more of that color payoff, which I think is so, so pretty. It just reminds me of like tropical island waters, so it is just beautiful in the summer. And the other jelly hollow flaky that I have is Playdate from the Splashed collection, which came out last summer. I absolutely love that collection, maybe with the exception of one of the polishes, the green, I think it's called Staycation, because it was just a little too sheer for me. Like you didn't get the same kind of color payoff as the rest of the collection. But yeah, this one is obviously another collection where it's the same finish in different colors. So again, if you're not a fan of the pink, you have a few other choices to pick, but this pink one is just so juicy and pretty, especially for the summertime. It's like a glistening watermelon pink. And I would say the hollow flakies in this are a lot more dense than they were in Riding Waves. So you do get more of that like silver metallic type of color coming through. So they are slightly different when it comes to their finishes, but they still are the same like holographic jellies. I don't know if I have a preference between the two, maybe something more like Riding Waves, but I am still such a huge fan of Playdate and just that collection in general. The next category is their toppers, and I really only have their flaky toppers. I don't have any of the shimmer ones, so I'm sorry that I can't really recommend any of those. But as far as the ones that I do have and love and recommend, the first one that I have is Compass, and this is just a super stunning and delicate almost copper kind of metallic microflake. I just especially love that copper color because it just gives so much warmth, and it's, you know, a little bit different than the typical gold microflakes, which I still love, but I don't know, having a copper one, like I don't really see this color super often, so I just really love this one from ILNP. But again, they also have like a gold version and a rose gold, but this is probably my favorite one from the 3. And I also really love and recommend Confetti, which is another metallic microflake topper, but this is like a rainbow and it is just so fun. I really love this one because I feel like usually when it comes to metallic sort of flakies, they almost have like a very silverish kind of look to it. But I just love how the colors in this one pop so much against your nail, whether it's against a sheer base or a colored base. Like you see the rainbow of the micro flakies in this, and it is just so pretty, so much fun. This reminds me of like sprinkles, and honestly, what is better than that for your nail polish? So next up we have their Magnetics, and ILNP only just started making magnetic polishes a year ago. I think the first one was in their second summer collection, and since then they would release 1 or 2 magnetics in almost every collection. So there is like a smaller handful of them compared to the other finishes that they have, but I would argue that their magnetics are one of the best. I absolutely love them, and that's coming from somebody who's not like a huge magnetic polish fan to begin with. I really am impressed with their formulas specifically. I just think they're so, so beautiful. So when it comes to my top 3 picks, the first one that I have is 0 Degrees, and this came out in last year's Winter Wonderland collection. Absolutely beautiful collection as a whole, but this just stood out to me right away. It's just a gorgeous deep blue jelly base with this really pretty icy, almost electric blue shimmer, and there's also this like holographic sort of microflake outside of that as well. When you do like a cat eye effect, you see the little flakies like in the negative space area of the magnetic shimmer, and ILNP adding in those those little flakies is like my favorite thing about their magnetics, because it just gives so much dimension to these polishes. They just look so layered, and it just adds this like extra detail that I think is so pretty. But for 0 degrees, I just especially love the color. It is just like the perfect winter blue. And you probably know I love wearing my magnetics with like a velvet effect, and this one looks so freaking plush and beautiful with a velvet effect. But yeah, I absolutely adore this one. Then these other two are from the Fairy Forest collection that came out earlier this spring, and we have Fawn and Enchantment. And we're gonna start with Enchantment because this is probably my top favorite magnetic. It's really hard between this and 0 degrees, but this one is an absolutely breathtaking teal jelly base with this shimmer that is green head on with a little bit of like gold fleck in there too, but the shimmer also shifts to blue in extreme angles. So it overall has like a very teal kind of vibe to it. There are these really stunning tiny holographic flakies in here as well that are outside of the magnetic shimmer. So it is just an overall stunning, enchanting polish, if you will. This is another one that also magnetizes so beautifully with a velvet effect, which you know I love. The shimmer in it just glows so much that it reminds me of like bioluminescence, which I feel like is kind of weird, but it just feels so accurate to me. And I feel like generally the ILNP Magnetics are very easy to work with when it comes to doing a velvet effect or even just cat eyes. If you've struggled with getting a nice velvet effect, I really cannot recommend their magnetics enough because they just look so stunning. And the other magnetic from the collection is Fawn, which is this really beautiful bronzy jelly base with a bright copper shimmer. But instead of the typical hollow flakies that we saw in the previous polishes, the flakies in this one are also copper. So it kind of has more of like a monochromatic look, which is what we've seen in other magnetics like Venom or Poison if you want a green or red variation. But I just really love how soft and dainty this one feels. Like this is such a beautiful shade that I think works so perfectly, especially for this time of year. I guess I just realized that I'm like a big fan of these like bronzy copper kind of colors because they're just like so warm and cozy and inviting. So I really love this one. I definitely would recommend it if you're not like a huge fan of like brown nails. This kind of is in between like an orange and a brown, you know? So if you don't like either of those colors, I think this is like a great shade to try. So even though I generally have had like an amazing experience with ILNP's magnetics, there are two that I didn't really like, and I would say one that I wouldn't recommend. Again, I want to preface that it could be like a personal preference thing. You know, if you are more of a fan of the very sheer jelly type of magnetic formulas, you might like these other two polishes as well. But the ones that I didn't like were Amber, which was actually their very first magnetic. I just felt like that one was like super sheer for me, and I just didn't love it as much. Maybe it has to do with the color too. Like it's just, you know, a bright orangey amber kind of color with a golden shimmer. But the other one that I definitely don't like and have a hard time recommending is Sandbar from the Under the Sea collection earlier this summer. That one was incredibly sheer to the point that when I swatched it, I was like, what is wrong with this? Like, it just didn't feel like it was to the same quality as their other magnetics. So I personally was disappointed in it because of that. I think on its own, like if you don't apply a magnetic effect or if you do a velvet effect, it would look better than with a cat eye. But for the 10th time, it could be like a personal preference thing. I just personally don't love super sheer jelly magnetics. I think the rest of what they offer are like the perfect kind of consistency where they are squishy enough that you can see a little bit of nail line, but they still feel very full coverage. So last but certainly not least, we are going over their creams. And if you've been watching my channel, you've seen that I have reviewed their cream collections that they have so far, because they only like just kind of launched their cream line, which is their studio color line. I believe it was earlier this year with the Arcade collection, but a couple of summers ago, they released the Poolside collection. And I guess, like, you know, people had some mixed reactions to the formulas where they were a little hit or miss. But since then, they've created their studio color line and have reformulated their creams. And so overall, with my experience, it still has been kind of hit or miss, honestly. Like, I didn't love the experience that I had using the Arcade Collection creams because they just felt more like crelly polishes and needed 3 coats. But then when I tried the reformulated Poolside collection, they were like 2 coaters for me and were absolutely beautiful. And their most recent creams were from the Fall Serenade bundle, which was like a little quad. And 3 of those were on the crelly side. 1 was like a super creamy cream. So it's a little all over the place, honestly. But as far as the ones that I think are worth getting, this one that I have is 2-piece, and this was from the Poolside collection, which was their line of neons essentially. And overall, I had a great experience with all of them. So as a collection, I would recommend them. But obviously the hot pink is gonna be my top pick. This one is just so freaking bright and in your face. Like, it is my favorite hot pink for the summertime. And I just was really impressed with the formula because it's like a solid 2-coater without needing a white polish underneath. So it just feels so lovely to work with. This next one I have is High Score, which is actually from the Arcade collection that I just mentioned I didn't really love, but I do feel like this was one of the better polishes from that line, where even though the first coat is a little bit on the crelly side, if I do a thick enough second coat, it is a solid 2-coater for me. But I just especially love the color of this one. I think it is super unique, especially to my collection. I get questions for this all the time. How does this compare to Holo Taco's I'm Live from the Julian Solomita collection or collab? And unfortunately, I don't have that one to compare, but at least in my eyes, they look really, really similar. Yeah, this is a stunning blurple polish. You just can't go wrong with a shade like this. And then from their most recent Fall Serenade bundle, my favorite one was Rosewood. One, I just love this color so much. I think it's so beautiful for the season, but I just felt that this one had the best formula of the 4. I just feel like the other ones had more of a crelly finish, which again is like a total personal preference thing. If you don't mind a crelly formula for your creams, then go for it. Like, they are beautiful colors, especially for this time of year. But as I've mentioned with like other videos, when it comes to creams, I really hate having to do a 3rd coat for any of them. Thankfully for the Fall Serenade bundle, they are darker colors. So the only one that might need a 3rd coat is the caramel shade. I'm pretty sure that was a solid 2-coater for me. I just would recommend this one because it is just so pretty, especially on the first coat alone. So yeah, that is pretty much the extent of my favorites and recommendations. Again, I'm so sorry that I just don't have as extensive of a collection to share more of them, but I hope that you enjoyed these. I guess some other thoughts that I want to share, just as a brand in general, I feel like ILNP has had an amazing reputation and it's so well deserved, honestly. Like, their formulas are so good and so consistent that I really feel like you can't go wrong with any polishes that you choose. They obviously have a wide range of different finishes and then different colors, which I sort of already mentioned as I was sharing some of my favorites. Like, if you don't like this specific color, they have others that you can choose from if you still want that same finish. Generally too, ILNP's formulas are more on the sheer side, so a lot of their specialty finish polishes are going to require 3 coats for full opacity or like almost full opacity, because there are some that are like super sheer, whether it's their jellies or some of their like iridescent kind of shimmers where you're still going to see some nail line on 3 coats. So if you're not a fan of that, you might not like some of these. But yeah, for what they offer, I feel like ILNP has the best value when it comes to like how beautiful the polishes are for how affordable they are. They really do compete with other brands, especially like other boutique brands that are a couple dollars more expensive, but they're pretty much like on the same page as them. So yeah, I just cannot recommend them enough because you just get such great value with these polishes. So I was gonna wrap up this video, but I decided that I can just talk about what's on my wish list because, as I said, I don't really have a lot of ILNP shades and there are a ton that I have been lusting over and wanting to add to my collection. So here is my wish list section. So first up, I am planning to pick up my favorite 3 from the new Home for the Holidays collection. I'm so sorry I got skipped for this collection, so I'm not gonna have a review video for it. And ideally, I would have just picked up the whole collection, but you're gonna see I'm prioritizing some other shades. But from this new release, I'm most excited about Joy, Forest Drive, and Bear Hug. I just think they are so beautiful, so perfect for the holiday season. I just get all the warm, toasty vibes from them. And as you know, I'm just a big fan of their holographic jelly flaky formula. So I think those 3 are the most beautiful ones. But for the full collection, I'm actually gonna go and pick up the Winter Resort collection from 2021, I believe. I have been lusting after that collection for so long. It's just one of those perfectly curated winter collections, in my opinion, on par with last year's Winter Wonderland, I would say, where I generally do love ILNP's collections. Like, I feel like across the board, they are so well curated, but there's something about those 2 winter collections that feel like peak to me. I also want to pick up a couple of shades from the Summer Nights collection a few summers ago, namely Opal Sunset, Downtown, and Pink Flamingo. Obviously, I'm just a huge fan of these shimmery, iridescent kind of polishes that give like a cellophane sort of look. I know Pink Flamingo definitely is very similar to Pixie Party, which I also really love and already have. So if anything, I'm kind of on the fence about that one, but I also want to get it just to do a comparison and see how close they actually are. And another super bright shade that I really want to get, hoping that it's actually going to be a dupe, is Misbehaving. And this is another hot pink jelly holographic polish that I'm hoping is going to be a pretty close dupe to Holo Taco's Life in Plastic from their anniversary collection. It's definitely my favorite from the set, so I'm hoping that these are going to be like as close as possible when it comes to a hot pink jelly holo. I think the main difference with ILNP's jelly flakies are that their flakies are like actual flaky bits. So they're like the irregular kind of shapes, and in Holo Tacos, it's more of like a uniform micro glitter. So it's a little bit different, but as long as color-wise they're the same, then I'll be happy. And then lastly, I have these 3 darker vampy kind of shades that I want to get. The first one is Bloodline, which actually was a recommendation from my favorite pinks video, because I just don't have a lot of like dark fall or wintry sort of pinks. And even though that one is very deep, where it's like borderline purple, I feel like it could work as like a super dark pink. Just looks gorgeous, and you know, I love when you guys give me recommendations, so I'm gonna try that one out. And the last 2 that I want to get are Set Sail and Vanity, which are 2 more holographic jellies. Okay, I have a type when it comes to ILNP, but these are just 2 super deep, like jewel tone shades, where Set Sail is a very dark navy, almost like royal blue kind of color. And then Vanity is a really beautiful deep purple that's more on like the blue leaning purple, where it's not a red toned purple. And I'm mainly interested in getting those 2 as kind of dupes or maybe alternates to Cirque's Facets line, where they have shades like Amethyst and Sapphire. I really love their collection and that line specifically from them, but they are pricey. So I'm hoping that these 2 are gonna satisfy that gap in my collection. So that wraps up the best of ILNP. So I cannot wait to hear what you think of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed my picks, even though there weren't as many, or they were definitely very repetitive if you watch my other favorite series videos. And hopefully you enjoyed me talking about what's on my wish list. Of course, I would love to know what's on yours. What are some must-haves that you are super excited about getting this year? Because again, I can't stress enough, I feel like with ILNP, they are a brand that you just can't go wrong with. At least that's been my experience. So hopefully that will be yours as well. But yeah, leave me any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.